All right, everybody. Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. What am I saying? I know you guys are doing well because I know what happened last night. So, if you are a Seahawks fan, today's a good day. Last night was great. Team took care of business. The team won. NFC West champions, number one seed in the NFC, first round bye. And it doesn't seem like we had any real big injuries coming out of that game last night either. So, life is good and we get to just chill, kick back, and watch other teams play football today. And there's a lot of games. And we know that Seattle's locked in. They are locked into the one seed. They cannot be knocked out of it. And we're just going to chill and see what happens in the rest of these games, mostly for fun. There are a couple of rooting interests we might have. And I do want to talk through those right now because I didn't do a rooting guide last week. And now we have enough information to know what's at stake in these games. So call it a belated rooting guide today. All right, guys, let's take a minute so I can tell you about Sleeper, a one-stop shop for all your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat on sports games in real time with other users. You can get the fastest scores, blazing fast sports news and sports alerts right at your fingertips. And of course, you can use Sleeper to play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. This is the way sports were meant to be enjoyed together. So download Sleeper today. Use promo code SBN to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. And you can pair that with another promo they have right now where you can get a $20 entry free with no deposit required. So get both of those things going. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states and growing. So check out Sleeper today. Get to it and go have some fun with sports this year. All right, so let's go through it. Starting with the Saints versus the Falcons, and this is kind of the pivotal game of the early window, not just for the league as a whole, but also from Seattle's perspective. Now, remember, Seattle has the number one seed on lock. So, in terms of Seattle's playoff positioning, these games don't really matter to us because our positioning is what it is already. However, the main focus for us in these games is going to honestly be the effect that the games have on the Atlanta Falcons pick that is going to the Rams at the end of the year. So, as you can see right now on Tankathon, Atlanta is sending the 12th overall pick to the LA Rams. So, we want that pick to go down. We want that pick to move closer to the middle. And in order for that to happen, we need the Falcons to win. Now, if the Falcons win, there's going to be a side effect here. The Panthers will make the playoffs instead of the Buccaneers. That's the other thing going on in this game. If the Saints win, Tampa Bay wins the division. If Atlanta wins, Carolina wins the division. Funky, I know. So there's also that at play. And there is a chance, although I do think it's unlikely, that the winner of the NFC South is the team that Seattle plays in the divisional round. They would have to beat the Rams. And I'll say this. With the way Tampa Bay is playing right now, I don't think there's any way they can beat any playoff team, much less the Rams. Carolina, if I had to pick one of the two teams to do it, I would probably pick Carolina because they just did it a few weeks ago. But I don't think either team can do it. So I'm not going to stress about that. I'm just going to say we want Atlanta to win, and we want to try to drive that pick a little bit further down. And if the result of that is that Carolina makes the postseason, okay. I'm not worried about that outcome, right? So we want Atlanta to win. And we're also going to need some strength of schedule tiebreaker stuff to go our way if we want to continue to push this in the right direction. So we've got Atlanta here, and then I've got another team here that we're going to talk about later. So Browns, Bengals, let's check this out. Browns, Bengals, no. Browns, Bengals, no. Now, the only thing that matters here in terms of our draft pick, or the Atlanta draft pick, if the Bengals win and the Falcons lose, the Bengals pick actually will go behind Atlanta's because the Bengals have a better strength of schedule. So, just to ensure that Cincinnati picks ahead of Atlanta, we want Cincinnati to lose. Now, Hopefully Atlanta makes this moot, but if they don't, these are the little things that can happen along the way to make it hurt a little bit less. Okay, so Packers-Vikings. This game doesn't mean anything for Green Bay's playoff positioning. They are locked into the 7 seed regardless. But we got a couple things going on here. First of all, Minnesota, technically, although it's extremely unlikely, but Minnesota 8-8, if they lose this game and go 8-9, and a bunch of strength of schedule stuff happens, it is possible, although again, very unlikely, that they could fall behind Atlanta, or they could have their pick jump Atlanta's pick. I don't think this is going to happen, but it's not completely impossible. However, if you take a look at this page here where we want the Atlanta strength of schedule to be strengthened, you can see we want Green Bay to win their game against Minnesota. And on top of that, if you take a look over here, you'll see that there is no impact, the Green Bay Minnesota game on the Baltimore strength of schedule. And we'll get to why we're talking about Baltimore strength of schedule in a little bit here. But suffice to say, because of this, if for no other reason, we want Green Bay to win. And obviously, Minnesota's pick is very unlikely to jump over Atlanta's because of the strength of schedule factor, but that's fine. We'll get to more of that later. All right, we got Cowboys-Giants. That's the next game here. Again, on the surface of it, not a game that really means much of anything. But Dallas, they are currently picking one spot behind Atlanta in the first round because of that tie. It's all because of that tie game. It gives them a tiny edge over Atlanta in their win percentage. So in order for Dallas to have their pick go over Atlanta's, we need Dallas to lose and Atlanta to win. Now, the Giants are going to be hard-pressed to beat the Cowboys, especially because I think the Cowboys are taking this game seriously. But if they do, that would help a little bit as well. All right. Next game, Titans-Jaguars. Strength of schedule and strength of victory doesn't really mean anything for Seattle anymore. So I'm not going to get caught up in that stuff, really. I guess if you want the strongest strength of schedule possible, you want Jacksonville to win because we beat them and the Niners didn't. But again, at this stage, what are the odds that that matters? Like, could it matter for our draft pick? I guess it's possible, but I mean, there's only going to be at most 2 other teams that have 14 wins, and they have such weak strengths of schedule. It's hard to, it's pretty much impossible to imagine a world where that ends up mattering for anything. So that's kind of a nothing because you don't see Tennessee versus Jacksonville on either of these pages. Colts Texans, though. So, interesting angle here. Colts Texans. Now, the Colts pick cannot go above Atlanta's pick because of strength of schedule. Indy actually has a good strength of schedule, so it's not going to go above Atlanta. However, there is some other strength of schedule consideration here where Atlanta has their strength of schedule boosted if Houston wins, and Baltimore will have their strength of schedule hurt if Houston wins. So therefore, we want Houston to win. So we want Houston to win this game. It does help our strength of schedule a little bit, I guess, although we played both teams. But again, we're not worried about that. The only thing we're thinking about here is the effect it has on Atlanta and Baltimore. Okay, so those are the morning games. So that's the morning slate. Not bad. There's some stuff to care about. Let's go to the afternoon. Jets, Bills, really not much to say here. The Bills are a playoff team. The Jets are way out of it, so there's no real impact here. And there's no Jets versus Bills on either of these pages. Lions, Bears. So this one, some wrinkles here. If the Bears lose and the Eagles win, and the Eagles, by the way, are resting starters, so they don't seem to care, but the Eagles could win even though they're resting starters in theory. There is a scenario where the Bears can fall to the 3 seed and the Eagles go to the 2 seed. Now, is that what we want? I don't think so. I think we want the Bears to stay in the 2 and the Eagles to stay in the 3. I think. It kind of depends on some other results, and I will admit that it's speculative and subjective. I think we want the Bears to stay in the 2 Although it depends on what the Rams do later. But I think we know what the Rams are going to do later. So I'm going to say we want the Bears to win. Also, the Lions, if they lose and the Falcons win, we'll see their draft pick go ahead of Atlanta's, possibly. So we want Detroit to lose for that as well. So yeah, we want the Bears to win, I believe. And it gets a little bit unclear the effect that'll have on Seattle, but I believe that it's for the best. Chargers, Broncos, again, 2 playoff teams. I don't think there's really any impact here. I don't see that game on either of the rooting guide pages here. So I don't think the Chargers, Broncos matters. Chiefs, Raiders. So there's a couple things going on here. If the Falcons lose, we want the Chiefs to lose as well, because it'll keep the Chiefs pick ahead of Atlanta. However, if the Falcons win, then their pick is pushed below Kansas City no matter what. So in that case, we actually want the Chiefs to win, because the Raiders winning would help the Ravens' strength of schedule, which is something that we do not want. And for those of you who maybe haven't figured it out yet, it's because if Baltimore loses, they will have the same record as a Falcons team that wins tomorrow. And we want the Ravens' strength of schedule to be dragged down enough to where they go ahead of Atlanta's pick. So more on that in a second. But in that scenario, we want the Chiefs to win. Okay, Cardinals, Rams. Now, if the Rams lose this game, they go to the 6th seed, and that means they're going to Philly in the first round, which is not a good matchup for the Rams. However, if they do get through Philly, they're probably going to play Seattle in the divisional round. And I don't think that's something that Seahawks fans want for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it feels like that's the Super Bowl. That's a matchup that should happen in the NFC title game. And besides that, that's not the great matchup. It's not. Like, I know we beat the Rams last time and all that, but that is not a great matchup for Seattle. That is not really the team that I want to be playing in my first playoff game. Now, if the Rams win this game, their first playoff game is going to be against probably the Panthers, maybe the Buccaneers, and both those teams should be pretty easy wins for the Rams. But in that scenario, it's much more likely the Rams would play the Bears in the divisional round. We would play, I think, the Niners, because I think the Niners are going to beat the Eagles. But again, this is all speculative. So there is another consideration here where the Cardinals winning will help the the Ravens' strength of schedule. So we actually want the Rams to win to hurt the Ravens' strength of schedule a little bit. But that is a smaller consideration compared to the playoff stuff that I just talked about. So it's subjective. It really is. Okay, Dolphins, Patriots. Dolphins and Falcons have the same record, so it's theoretically possible that Miami's pick could go behind Atlanta. So I guess we want Miami to lose just to make sure that doesn't happen, but very unlikely we have anything to worry about anyway. Commanders, Eagles. So we do have a strength of schedule consideration here where we want Philly to win because it will boost the Falcons' strength of schedule a little bit. And again, like I said, I'm hoping, I'm really hoping that the Bears take care of business in the other game against the Lions, because I would rather have the Bears in the 2 seed than the Eagles. I think it just sets up a little bit better. But there is this element at play at well here where we want the Eagles to win. So hopefully the Bears make this moot. And finally, last game of the year, Ravens Steelers. We want the Steelers to win. And the reason why is pretty simple. There is a chance if Baltimore loses, Atlanta wins, and there are a couple of switches that get flipped with each team's strength of schedule, Baltimore could end up picking ahead of Atlanta. So if everything goes right tomorrow, there's a possibility that Atlanta's pick gets driven all the way down to like 16th, or I don't think 17th is possible, but it could be driven all the way down to 16, which, given where we were like a month and a half ago, is great. That would actually be a big shot in the arm, because this looked dire as recently as about a month and a half ago. All right, that's going to do it for the rooting guide. I guess you could call it a rooting guide. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Have fun with football today.